Anpu, Lord of the Underworld, Master of the Scales, Waiter of Righteousness, He who adjusts the balance in the Hall of Two Truths, Great Anpu, Opener of the Way, Guardian of the Veil, Keeper of Secrets, grant me safe passage through the realms of the 𝑇𝑗𝑖𝑡. Stand as my eternal guardian, forever watchful over my tomb. Great Anpu, Lord of Peace, Prince of Eternity, Speaker of spells and granter of breath, He who eases death, be praised. Hello beautiful star, thanks so much for tuning in. I am Astar and welcome to Source Light Star. So today we are bringing through messages from Anubis, and today's transmission is extra special because today we are collaborating with the beautiful Shōra from the White Walls. So we are both going to be tuning into the NETERU, the deity of Anubis. So you find the link to Shōra's video in the description box, so you can watch part 2 of this transmission. So thank you so much, Shōra, for collaborating with me. I am very excited to see what comes through. So without further ado, let's get in. Today we are channeling messages from Anubis, also known as Anpu in the ancient Kemetic language. So we are gonna be shuffling some cards and let's see what Anubis has to tell us for today. Judgment. So interesting, the Judgment card has been coming up in almost all the readings that I did. So there is definitely a judgment moment taking place. 9 of Swords reversed. Then we have the 8 of Coins. One more card. Okay, and we have the Sun. Then there were some cards falling on the floor. Yes, the tower fell on the floor. Beautiful energy. So the NETERU of Anubis, also known as Anpu, that is actually the faculty of our intellect to discern good and bad. And when I say good and bad, this is basically all the decisions that are in alignment with our soul, with Source or the Divine, or the actions that are out of alignment with Source or the Divine. So here we are really talking about the virtues on one side and the vices on the other side. And this is very much taking us to the 42 virtues of Ma'at. So in order to live a righteous life, a virtuous life, in ancient Egypt the people were following the 42 ideals of Ma'at. And when we follow these 42 virtues of Ma'at, we are basically living a righteous life. And so Anubis, that's actually the master of righteousness. So Anubis is basically the nature, the NETERU, which is helping us connect to the virtues of Ma'at. So we are in alignment with our soul. And it's very interesting that the 9 of Swords shows up, which is by far the darkest card in this reading. So when we think about Anubis, there is often the connotation of a very dark creature. Obviously, it's also the nature of death. So in ancient Egypt, Anubis was present when the deceased were being mummified, because Anubis is basically the guide of the underworld. Another name for Anubis is also the Lord of the 𝑇𝑗𝑖𝑡. So the 𝑇𝑗𝑖𝑡 in ancient Egypt is the underworld. This is talking about the other side of the veil. That's why there is this connotation of Anubis being a dark deity. But this darkness actually refers to the underworld, to the realm of the blackness, the other side of the veil. And Anubis is basically the guide in the underworld. So when we connect to the underworld, that's basically another way of saying of connecting to the subconscious. So we connect to the subconscious every time we go to sleep or when we meditate. And when we sleep in dreams or in meditation, then Anubis is basically the psychopomp, the guide that is guiding us through the realm of the Duat, the realm of the underworld, in order to reconnect with Osiris. So Osiris, that's our higher self. That's the divine, that's the soul spark. And that's why we also say that Anpu or Anubis, that's the son of Osiris. Because Anubis is actually created out of the union of Osiris and Nephtys. This is Ausar and Nebet. So as we might know, Osiris or Astar is married to Isis or Auset. This is like Shiva and Shakti. Isis is the wife of Osiris. They are basically like the cosmic couple. But one day, Osiris got intoxicated, and then by mistake, instead of mating with his wife Auset or Isis, Osiris mated with Nephtys. And the thing is, Nephtys and Isis, they are both sisters. So they are basically one and the same, but they are like a mirrored aspect of each other. Both Isis and Nephtys, they are the serpents of creation, the divine feminine energy. So Isis, that's the upward moving serpent. That's basically the serpent of transcendence, going from the creation back to the silence. And that's why Isis is connected with this idea of Kundalini rising. Isis is basically divine inspiration, divine wisdom, the divine wisdom that connects us to Osiris. And that's why Isis and Osiris, they are a couple. Because in order to experience Osiris, in order to experience the infinite nature of our soul, we have to have Isis, which is the divine feminine energy, which is basically the experience of divine wisdom, the inspiration of spirit. And Nephtys, that's the downward flowing serpent. That's basically the divine feminine energy that comes from nothingness and is flowing into creation. So this is basically the serpent of creation, the life force energy that is flowing into form, but since it is flowing into a form, into a crystallized structure, it also has to die. Because everything that is flowing into form, into a crystallized structure, also has to die. Because Nephtys, that's everything which is finite. All form is finite. Everything that is in manifested creation is finite. That's why Nephtys is also the deity of death. Because everything which is flowing into form also has to die. Because inherently we come from the silence. Inherently we come from the nothingness. And from this nothingness, Nephtys is descending into form, but the form is only temporary. So after a while we have to die and then flow back again with the uprising serpent. This is then Isis. So the downward flowing serpent from the silence into creation is Nephtys, and the upward moving serpent from the creation to the silence, that is Isis basically. So Osiris, that's the infinite nature of the soul. Osiris is like the sun. That's why the sun is showing up. The sun is like the soul spark. So we all have the soul spark at the center of our heart. And when we awaken to this soul spark, when we awaken to this divine spark within, then we become Osiris. Osiris is basically the enlightened human. Osiris is this realization that I am source while I am in the physical vessel. And so when we follow the virtues of Ma'at, when we live a virtuous life, then we are basically connecting with the soul spark within our heart. But the thing is, since Osiris got intoxicated, Osiris mated with Nephtys, this is basically the infinite nature of the soul, the infinite sun, connecting with the physical. And since it's connecting with the physical, this is basically talking about the ego nature. So everything that's finite, everything that is temporary. And so when Osiris mates with Nephtys, this is basically the infinite soul, the soul spark, temporarily forgetting about this infinite nature. Because as the story goes, Osiris becomes intoxicated, and by mistake, Osiris is mating with Nephtys instead of Isis. And as a result of this union, Anubis is born. So this story really helps us understand the nature of Anubis, what Anubis actually is. And so Anubis is basically the deity that is moving between the realms, because it's both a result of Osiris, the eternal nature of our soul, but also a result of Nephtys, which is basically the physical realm. Everything that's physical, everything that we can see and perceive with our senses and our eyes, that's Nephtys. And so Anubis is basically the guide that is helping us navigate these two realms. And that's why another name for Anubis, it's also the master of the scales. And a lot of you might have heard the story of the weighing of the heart, where basically the heart is being weighed against the feather of truth, the feather of Ma'at. And this is basically beautiful. Now it connects to the judgment. This is basically the story of the judgment day. So Anubis is present in the judgment hall of Ma'at, where again our heart is being weighed against the feather of truth, the feather of Ma'at. So the feather of truth, the feather of Ma'at, the ostrich feather, that is basically the symbol of being connected to the soul, the symbol of living a virtuous life. And if the feather of truth is being weighed against the heart, this is basically the moment of judgment to see whether or not we are acting in alignment with the truth, whether or not we are acting in alignment with our soul, in alignment with the source spark. It's basically acting from the heart instead of acting from the ego. So when we act from the ego, then our heart is heavier than the feather of truth, and then there is imbalance. So when this imbalance is created, we have to live a virtuous life, we have to follow the virtues of Ma'at in order to balance the scales again. And this is basically acts of love. This is basically acting in alignment with our higher self. Every action which is in alignment with our soul, every action which is in alignment with our higher self, is basically allowing the scales to be balanced. So Anubis, being the master of the scales, this is basically a symbol of, again, Anubis being this discerning faculty between what is good and what is bad, what is in alignment with our heart and what is out of alignment. And this judgment moment, this weighing of the heart, does not only happen in the moment of literal death. Like there is often the belief that this is basically only happening when we transcend this physical body, when we are basically dying and we transcend into the higher realms. But the thing is, this judgment is actually happening all the time. So Anubis is with Ma'at in the judgment hall at all times, because in every present moment we always have a choice to choose something that is in alignment with our heart and something which is out of alignment with our heart. And so basically the scales, they are being weighed at all times. And when something is out of alignment, when our heart is heavier than the feather of truth, then this is basically calling for alignment. And this is very much talking about the law of karma. So Ma'at is also the NETERU, the nature of karma. She's basically making sure that everything in the universe is being balanced, that the balance, the harmony is maintained. And in order to maintain the harmony in the cosmos, basically Anubis is helping Ma'at. So the word cosmos, that actually means harmony. It's the order. So in order to maintain the order, we need Ma'at, we need the Divine Mother, but we also need Anubis, because Anubis is basically the guide that helps us discern which side to take. And that's why in ancient Egypt the color of Anubis is basically black and gold. So when we choose, let's say, the dark side, when we choose the ego, when we choose the matter, then we are moving towards, let's say, the dark path, the path of illusion. But if we choose the gold, then we are basically choosing the path that connects us to the sun, that connects us with our higher self. This is basically acting from the ego or acting in alignment with our higher self, with the soul, with Osiris. And the reason why Anubis is represented as a jackal, as a dog, it's basically talking about loyalty. So it's the symbol of being loyal to the golden path, this symbol of being loyal to Osiris, this symbol of being loyal to our higher self, to the divine, to our soul. So every spiritual aspirant, sooner or later, is connecting with Anubis, because Anubis is basically opening the way to connect with our higher self. And that's why another name for Anubis, it's also the opener of the ways. So this is basically talking about the removing of obstacles. So it's basically removing the obstacles that are in the way of connecting with Osiris, connecting with the sun, connecting with our soul. This is a very similar energy to Ganesh, where Ganesh is also the remover of obstacles, and it's basically removing the obstacles so that we can connect with the sun. But there is a catch. Sometimes there are also obstacles being placed on our path in order to help us connect with the sun. So Anubis is not only opening the ways, sometimes Anubis is also closing the ways. That's why Anubis has this dual nature. Anubis is this guide who is helping us understand certain challenges, who is helping us understand this experience and helping us make sense why certain things are the way they are, to ultimately help us connect with the sun again. So Anubis is actually a very interesting energy. It's a very unique energy. And a lot of people fear this energy of Anubis. And so one of the reasons why a lot of people fear Anubis or think of Anubis as a dark creature, it's basically because on the path to enlightenment, sooner or later we will have to face our fears. We will have to face our shadows and our darkness. Because without integrating our shadows, without facing the darkness, there is no coming into light. And that's why in order to go really high up, to really connect to the highest sphere of source, we also have to be willing to go all the way down, to face all the darkness and all the shadows. And this is basically where Anubis is helping us. Anubis is guiding us in this journey, in the underworld, in order to facilitate this coming into light again. So Anubis is very much our guide when we are going through the dark night of the soul, when we are facing the darkness and our shadow, in order to then reconnect with the light. Because before we can reconnect with the light, we have to go through this death process. And that's why Anubis is the deity of death, and also Nephtys is the deity of death, because everything that's physical, everything that has form, needs to die. And so when Osiris, the infinite nature of the soul, the eternal nature of the divine, is being intoxicated and is mating with Nephtys. This intoxication is basically talking about us forgetting our divine nature, the human being forgetting that we are Osiris, that we are the soul, the divine, the highest source basically. And when we forget about our divine nature, when we forget about Osiris, then this is basically creating these ego attachments. But these ego attachments, sooner or later they will have to die. Sooner or later we will have to go back to the light again. And that's why Nephtys is basically everything that's temporary, whereas Osiris is everything that's eternal. So we are eternal beings. And since we as eternal beings are moving into the temporality of the physical realm, sooner or later this temporary physical realm, this temporary physical incarnation also has to go back to the eternity. And that's why we can actually go through multiple deaths in our life, because every time an ego attachment, an ego aspect of ourself is dying, we reconnect with the infinite nature, with the eternal nature of Osiris, which again is our soul, this source spark. And Anubis, beautiful Anubis, our beautiful guide, is helping us in this journey of reconnecting with the light, reconnecting with the truth. And this is why the tower is showing up. When we look at the tree of life, the tower is actually the path that connects Nephtys with Osiris. That's basically the tower that needs to fall in order for us to reconnect with the eternal nature of our soul. So the symbol of the tower, that's something man-made. This is basically talking about the ego attachment. So this castle that we have built based on this persona is the tower that we built. But if we have built this tower, these walls are basically preventing us from connecting with the sun. And in order to reconnect with Osiris, in order to revive Osiris, the tower has to fall. We have to go through this ego death in order to remember the infinite eternal nature of our soul. And this is the path of the tower, from Nephtys, from the physical realm, to the immaterial, to the spiritual realm, to the other side of the veil. So Anubis is basically the guide that is supporting us in this moment of death, in this moment when the tower is falling. And so it's a really beautiful energy, because it's this loyal energy. So Anubis is always by our side, no matter if it's dark or if it's blissful. It doesn't matter if we are experiencing pain or suffering, or if we are experiencing joy and bliss. Anubis is always present to help us be in alignment with our truth. So Anubis is really helping us not to fear death. That's why Anubis is the deity of death, the bringer of death. It's the death that we have to go through in order to reconnect with the light, in order to reconnect with the eternal nature of Osiris. So the next time you hear about Anubis, about the Lord of the Death, the master of the scales, the guardian of the underworld, you may look at this energy in a different way. And I hope this video inspired you to connect with Anubis, to work with this beautiful deity. So I hope this video has shed some light on the nature of Anubis. I hope this video has helped you understand what the nature of Anubis is and how to connect with this deity, how to work with this deity, because Anubis can really help us on our path. Anubis is our loyal guardian, our loyal guide, who is always by our side. Beautiful star, this was your transmission from Anubis, and please don't forget to also check out Shōra's transmission. You find the link in the description box. And thanks so much for tuning in. I really hope you resonated with the messages. Please let me know if you did. And please also let me know which other deity from ancient Egypt or any other deity you would like to connect with and get messages from. I would be very happy to tune in and see what comes through. And if you would like to go deeper, I'm also offering personal readings and healing sessions, so you find all the information on my website below. Thanks so much for watching again. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye, much love.